Content warning. These conversations contain a lot of cursing, cats, and trans realness. When I first set out to have these chats, I thought they were going to be 10-15 minutes long. Most of them were more than 3 hours long, some were 5 hours long. And every person included here is now a very real friend that I love very much. Everything offered is that person's perspective, and we're all in varying places of understanding of ourselves and the world that we have to deal with. But we all stand firmly in the knowledge that all trans people are valid and all deserving of love, safety, and community. Happy Pride, beautiful people. For you, coming out and telling the people that you love that love you, was that well, I mean, we all know that there's this like, oh my god, I'm afraid. But was that like freedom, or was it like, holy fuck, now there's consequences?
It was a little bit of both because my marriage of 10 years fell apart just about overnight, disintegrated. I told her, and she was like, I can't be with you then. And then I tried to do the old, I take it back, I was joking, I take it back. And she's like, no, you've already told me this, and now I can't get it out of my head.
Yeah.
And so I was really devastated with that, especially having kids. I wanted my children to be with, both of their parents, and that's just not going to happen.
Uh-huh.
And it was freeing, but it also came with a lot of consequences. So
for sure,
can't say that I came out of it with nothing. But
yeah, do you guys manage to get along at this point, and like she's respectful of you and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, we get along pretty good. And that's a good thing, because not all parents who are separated get along like that. It can really be challenging.
Before coming out, did you have like a huge amount of fear about it, or were you just like, I just need to do this and it's happening?
I don't think I had a lot of fear. I often liken it to peeling the layers of an onion. I sort of did it in a number of stages.
Yeah.
I had a period where I was quite publicly challenging gender bending. Mm-hmm. And then I had a period where I identified as non-binary.
Yeah.
Non-binary femme. And then, fuck it, I'm a woman, mm-hmm. And went all out. So I don't know. I think I was dealing with so many things at the time as well. And I have this very strong sense of justice.
Sure.
That this is who I am, and people better fucking accept me.
Yeah.
And so I just went for it. I didn't allow myself to have a lot of fear going into it. I just took the steps necessary, let the pieces fall where they may.
Yeah, so I think I'm similar to you in that, like, I never doubted myself in this process. I wondered about what the consequences would be, and what other people would be like, but I was never like, am I doing the wrong thing? Am I a sham or whatever? I don't know what people think when they have self-doubt even. But just like, I was very firm with all of the people that I knew, to my own detriment at some point, because I like drew this line. Mm-hmm. And sometimes if people were on the other side of it, I lost those people. And did you lose people in the process?
I don't think I lost all that many, because I had already ideologically distanced myself from a lot of extended family, mm-hmm. A lot of people from my past in general. Yeah. So I was quite amazed at the response when I sent my posted my public notice. This is who I am, this is my name. And it was quite amazing, the response I got from my extended network. I think some people sort of faded away, but they weren't necessarily close or had enough meaning in my life to suddenly miss.
Did you lose a bunch of people when it happened, or were a lot of people understanding?
I would say 50-50%. I did lose people, and I also gained some more people. And that 50% that I lost, I look back at those situations and I just look at everything as a journey. And I just, kind of come to terms with myself that that's how it was supposed to be. Because when me and these few other individuals, we connect, there is not much of a connection.
Yeah.
We have very different lives. We have very different perceptions. We have very different ways of how we view who we are as people. And I've learned to be okay with that.
Yeah.
Because
so much more
I
gentle
have
than I
a
am.
little problem. Like, I have a problem, with them living their lifestyle, and they have a problem living my lifestyle, in a sense. So it's just like, what, fuck it, let's just, fuck on, let's go separate ways. And whenever we see each other at parties or say, some form of mutual gathering, we'll be civil and just say hi. And it's just nice to see that the person is progressing in their own individual life.
Yeah.
So yes. Maybe you should fight with those demon of yours and just let it be, because one thing I'll tell you as a person I've learned is that we can't control everybody, but we can control how we feel and how we view things. So let people be people, and it is what it is.
Did you lose people in the process of this?
No, but there are certain people that I just don't really wish to associate with anymore since coming out, because I just don't think it's going to be positive influence on me.
Yeah.
And to some people in my family, I'm in stealth mode for like safety reasons. I don't even think they're a threat to me, but just in my own subconscious, there are certain people in my family that I'm still very closeted to.
Well, and that makes perfect sense. It's just like, if it's somebody that you're forced to deal with and you just don't, it's almost like they're not worth it. Like, not worth the bullshit, right?
Yeah. Or in my grandmother's case, she's like got dementia. She's 92 tomorrow. And like she can't hear very well and can't see. So 90% of the time she doesn't even remember my like birth name.
Yeah.
So if I was to change my identity on her, like who the fuck are you? Like, what are you doing in my house? Like,
I'm not even fully out as non-binary. And I even struggle with the term, as I think I'm like, it's like a really, I feel like controversial to say so. Simply, I don't know. I don't feel safe everywhere. So sometimes I'll just not.
Yeah, in 10 or 15 years,
I
I feel like so much of this stuff is going to be like so much more normalized, just like the way gayness and, lesbianism became much more normalized in our society.
Yeah.
That, there's more room for comfort and safety in the future. I really fucking hope.
Yeah. And I feel like when it comes to my gender identity, I feel more aligned in sort of being out and authentic and feeling totally safe in more intimate relationships, whether it's romantic, platonic, or sexual. Like, I feel like those are the ways I can be aligned with my gender, as opposed to just, here's me out as this, but what does that mean? I find myself more having those moments of the euphoria when I'm spending time either one-on-one with people or in smaller groups and with queer and trans folks. Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
that's like, so I'm both glad of that, but I'm also like, I wish that, I know for me, and I know it's not the exact same experience, but I know for me, being misgendered is just like, it's just like a little wee stab right in my heart. Not a big stab, just a little wee stab, and then I'm over it.
Okay.
So if it's like similar for
Yeah.
you, and that's just
Yeah.
like kind of the way it is in the world a lot, well, fuck.
Yeah. Yeah, and then sometimes it's just too many wee stabs. That's what it becomes, right? That's a wee stab, but that's a lot of wee stabs daily.
I didn't really come out as trans. I kind of was just like, by the way, it was more like a PS because I had already come out when I was 17 about my sexuality, and that went horribly.
Sure.
Like, I lost everyone. And so when I was coming to terms with being trans, I was like, it might fucking happen again. Like, I guess I have. So I was like, I don't think I went back and forth between thinking I'm not strong enough to do this to when I was feeling more positive and strong, I'd be like, well, I've already done it before where I've lost family, social group, had to leave physically my hometown. Like, I've done it before, I can do it again, I guess, just like upgrade the social network again if people are going to be shitty. So yeah, I don't know.
Well, so for me, I didn't really think, I was too busy thinking about the trans thing to realize that oh my God, I'm suddenly a lesbian. So actually, we have this like intersecting thing here, because like as I came out as trans, people were like, "Oh, so do you date dudes now?" And I'm like, "What the fuck? Why would you think that? What is wrong with you? How would that be a thing at all?" But then I was like, "Wait a second! I'm part of a community that I didn't even realize that I would be."
Yeah.
Like, I was like, I'm gonna have my trans people, but then I'm like, wait, am I even valid as a lesbian? And then I had to like actually research that and talk to people, and like, a couple of lesbian friends were like, yeah, of course you are, just like, do you, and that's fun, and do chicks, and fucking cool. For you, because you'd gone through the the coming out, which like in kind of a way it was all a lie, Eddie. this whole like lesbian ruse that you played on people. How dare you? But
I never came out as a lesbian. That's the funny thing.
Oh, okay.
I was just trying to talk to people about my sexuality, and there was no room. It was like it was so conservative and black and white. Like it's like, you're attracted to women. Well, I guess you're dyke or lesbian. Like there's no spectrum. It's just you're this or that. Very oversimplification. So I kind of, after a while, I kind of maybe thought that it's more a label that people put on me because I just had no room for questioning. Spectrum is all just very, black and white. So I kind of, I think that's maybe a common kind of narrative is like the trans guy that was like, oh, I did the lesbian thing and then I was a trans guy. But like, I don't know. I think my sexuality is leans towards being pansexual. And so I always kind of identify now these days as a queer man, and I'm loving that so much. I'm having so much fun with that identity. So yeah.
For the longest time, I put myself in this box that I have to be a man.
Yeah.
Or that's the only way I'm going to get access to testosterone, things like that.
Sure.
It's this awful, terrible thing, transmedicalism, where you have to take HRT and have the surgeries in order to be considered trans. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, that's disgusting. For one thing, some people their bodies can't react well to hormone replacement or beta blockers or things like that. Another thing, surgery is fucking expensive. And sometimes certain things aren't covered, like chest surgery is covered, but maybe not facial feminization or facial masculinization. Sure. Some people, maybe they've been working in the corporate world so long, if they come out, it might ruin their whole life, things like that. So there's no right or wrong way to be trans.
Yeah.
And if someone says they're trans, they're trans.
For sure. Well, and also like for a binary trans person like me, there was a moment where I was like, I am deconstructing my own gender, right? It's like I am like rebuilding myself in a certain way. And what I did was I like rebuilt myself into the binary, which is, well, I don't know if that's as good for society as people who deconstruct gender and then not reject it or anything like that, but just be like, these rules that you say exist, who says? Like, what authority? And what authority do you have over my soul and who I am as a being? Where does that come from? And for people to put that energy forth, I think for me personally, it's been really inspiring to see non-binary people just come into their own over the last couple of years and get the attention and understanding from mainstream communities that they have. There's still a long way to go with that.
But there's still a long way to go for binary trans people.
For sure. Yeah.
And like the one thing I need to get out there is, sure, I'm doing the testosterone route and I want to go the surgical route, but I'm not going to reject any other person that says they're non-binary because they're not doing the medical thing.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Like, non-binary has many faces, has many aesthetics, has many... in the indigenous culture, it's considered two-spirit. You are literally man and woman. And it's like, there's no right or wrong way to do it. And I just don't... It upsets me when people get down on other trans people or other non-binary people because they don't live up to their standards.
Yeah. Or like it's gatekeeping, right? Of the most profound lateral violence sort is that I'm doing this better than you, and therefore you're a piece of shit and I'm great. Or something like that. Like, it's that type of thing, is that these ideas that I have that are created around what I needed to be in order for me to be strong, I need to recognize that I can't apply those to other people. I can like offer them my thoughts and feelings and stuff like that, and I should be a little careful when doing so, because the things that made me strong don't apply to everybody. And I think that there's a thing that I'd read like long ago in a book, and it's always stuck with me. It's like the most simple thing that I can know about gender is that your gender is unique. Right? As an individual, just your gender, your own personal gender is yours and no one else's. And that no one else's is yours. And that there might be similarities and there might not be. But like, just act with grace. Doctors. How was approaching that and finding a doctor that you felt comfortable with and feeling comfortable with, like making sure that you have the right advice from a doctor?
I had already done my research to look for different clinics that would provide people with HRT and recommendations and such for almost a year before I started, before I publicly came out. And so I think in March of 2016, I had found out that I had an appointment with a gender clinic in St. Catharines. Because the options there were pretty much either CAMH in Toronto, about which I had heard horrible things.
Nightmare.
And then I think I heard through some people locally about Quest in St. Catharines.
Yeah.
And so I had contacted them, and at first they were saying, we're not taking new people at this time. But then they did have an opening, and in September I saw them, and I was very glad that they used the informed consent model. So I did not really have to convince anyone. It was a short interview. And then they made some notes and made my next appointment, and that's when I got my prescription.
So basically a blood test just confirmed and bam. And I mean, that's the way it should be. And, unless there's a severe health problem, nothing should keep you from being on the hormones that you're supposed to have in your body. I'm really surprised sometimes to hear stories from people about, and to have experience. Like, I experienced some pretty severe gatekeeping from doctors that were actually supposedly, specialists with trans people locally in Hamilton. And I'm really glad to be beyond that now, because wow, it was a rough year and a half of my life where I was on just a testosterone blocker and had no hormones in my body.
I'm sorry, that must have been rough.
I just wasted away. I didn't know what the consequences were, and the doctor wasn't telling me. So,
Hmm.
but I am so glad. It's like really good to hear a positive story about like just. I think informed consent is a really powerful thing, and that more doctors need to understand that that's how to actually deal with this, because I guess there was a period of time where they wanted mental health consults and stuff like that, which is crazy to me. I don't understand it at all.
And I think it was still somewhat new for them to be using that model, because they sounded proud of themselves for having adopted this model when I came in and said that we are using the informed consent model now, and read this, and we'll basically take your word for it.
That's awesome.
And I really think that's what I think my biggest sort of gatekeeping was, just the delays in having to wait for this clinic from March until September, which seemed horribly long.
Forever, really.
And then from and then from September to October to actually get my prescription. Really, that should be at the family physician level, where they should all have basic training to be able to navigate that for people.
And I'm actually really surprised. Like, I know there's more training for doctors going through medical school now, or apparently that's what I've been told.
Because, like I was just telling you about the doctor problem, we've had a couple of only transgender doctors pop up here in Tulsa, where they're like, all I do is see transgender patients, and they're good. They're good doctors. And, they're like, I don't know if you've ever heard of Dr. Powers or anything like that. Yeah, but there's several doctors who are like, we subscribe to the Dr. Powers method, and that's really cool, because I even know 2 years ago, doctors were pretty much like, okay, here's 200 milligrams of spirulactone, and here's 4 milligrams of estradiol, and that's what WPATH says. That's it.
Yeah, and you're lucky to be getting that 4 milligrams, right? Like, it's a small.
Yeah. And I even know when my first hormone prescribing doctor, she was like, "Are you really prepared to wear a dress? Are you prepared to be a woman?" And I was like, "Yes, honey, I am a woman. I just look really not like a woman.
Yeah.
So give me my shit."
Disclaimer, I'm not giving anybody medical advice here. So listen to your doctor or whatever, but make sure that it's a good doctor that you're listening to and that you know your shit. And there's really great information. There's, lots of great information online in groups on Facebook in particular. Super awesome. Yeah, it's huge, because you can find what you think is a good doctor, and they're like, yeah, this is the way. And you're like, so no progesterone? What are you talking about? They're like, no, I don't do that. It's not good for you. I'm like, what?
Right.
It's not good for me to have the hormones that my body is supposed to have. Sure.
It's been really cool. Like, I found doctors were really, really helpful, despite there being some kind of anti-trans, I think, higher-ups in a certain hospital that I won't name, but
sure.
So it was kind of nerve-wracking understanding that the healthcare that I'd gone to get from a healthcare provider in Canada was like, the doctors were actively they were out to help me, but then people who had power in the system were actively trying to take that care away.
Yeah.
So,
well, apparently, in that system,
that was eye-opening.
Yeah, in that system, women can't even get birth control refills while they're in that hospital. Mixing religion and healthcare is a strange thing to do.
I did not know that about the birth control.
Oh, there's a laundry list. We won't go into it here. But
yeah, of course. But testosterone has been, I think I almost have like the opposite, well, not opposite, but like how you were saying, it was almost more important to talk about it. I think I'm finding the physical, I feel like I talk about it less than, I haven't talked about it a ton. I feel like part of it though was that I had my mother passed away a month after I started transitioning. Suddenly, she passed away, and I had to go deal with a lot of my whole family estate. So I didn't really. My transition was kind of. I feel like the social aspect of it got put on hold because I was like I had to go back to my hometown where historically I couldn't be out at all. It felt unsafe. So that was really weird. And so it was actually the physical changes that mattered the most to me because it was more about how I felt inwardly and was starting to be expressed outwardly without not really knowing if I could talk about it in the kind of where I was at that point when I first started. Like I thought I was going to be in a very different situation. So
and he had been my family doctor since I was a kid, like since I was a baby. So he had known me. And so when I went in, what I said to him was, and this would never work nowadays with computers and internet. So I'm like, so what I said to him was, the doctor who had prescribed me hormones had retired and didn't leave a forwarding phone number. And I needed hormones again. And my doctor did a physical examination, saw that I was in fact on hormones because I had breast development, and said, okay, what were you on? And I said, 1.25 milligrams of estrogen twice a day. And he was like, okay.
Yeah. Oh, that's phenomenal. I did something similar.
So very lucky when it came to that. You have no idea. And then when I went off hormones between 19 to 26 and I went back on them, he was like, didn't you just, and I, like I said, my doctor was my doctor since I was a baby. So we talked very candidly. And he was like, didn't you just fucking go off hormones because you wanted to be a man?
Oh.
And then I was like, well, and I explained to him that, during the time of being off hormones, I had become a major drug addict. Yeah. I was self-medicating to the point that I was trying to kill myself. And going back to being my authentic self was what was going to save me.
Yeah.
So he sent me to Dr.
I lost somebody to that as like the, making a decision for a family member that demanded it and saying that, I can put this off for a couple of years or that kind of thing. And it's like, the intensity of having had what we have, even though life is really hard, and going backwards from that can be like so fucking hard. And I'm so glad that you're okay from there forward.
When I transitioned, detransitioned, and then transitioned again, I did it all in the same city.
Yeah.
Like I did it all in Hamilton, and in all honesty, and I'm not a religious person, so I always hate saying this phrase, but it seems to be the best one to fit it. But by the grace of God, I'm still alive.
Sure.
Because I don't think... Okay, did I ever tell you that I was rejected 3 times to change my gender marker on my birth certificate? 3 times.
Oh, no. What?
You know what? And you know what the final straw was? They sent me a long form birth certificate with the letter F at the last rejection. So, as you could probably imagine, I don't even think I could handle them saying, well, actually... Like, what could they say? What could a doctor that I've been told is trans-friendly and non-binary friendly say to me to reject me? But in my head, I'm just like, I don't think I can I don't know. Where am I going to go from there? Then I will never get the surgery if I can't. Like, I have it in my head. Like, I've already jumped to the conclusion that they're going to be like, sorry, no.
Oh, sorry. You might feel like you need to perform non-binariness to be acceptable.
Yes.
Like for what they're looking for in this like specific way. And it's like, you're not getting it, doctor.
Yeah.
This is not the point.
Well, I was blessed because I've had the same doctor for over a good 15 years.
Nice.
And the doctor that I go to is not even in my town. It's actually in Toronto. And it's one of those, it's Sherburne Health Center.
Yes.
So basically the whole facility is very pro LGBTQ community. So therefore the doctors, nurses, receptionists, whoever, even the janitors, they're so welcoming. They're so welcoming. They're so loving. It's like they're happy to see you when you come in for your appointment. So having being stuck to the same doctor by choice, I've never necessarily had bad experiences. Although here and there I may have went to a walk-in clinic or maybe say an emergency ER. But for some reason, all those injuries or emergencies have always been something like an arm or a face or whatnot, to the point where they don't really have to scope me anywhere deeper than that.
Yeah.
So I get away with it.
To my mind, it's gender should be a joy, right? Oh, but like it's so fraught with this discomfort and drama and pain and judgment and all of this stuff coming from people externally. So when we start like getting into the pure joy of it, like if I want to fucking go do dude shit and feel it and let myself fully into that, well, now I'm in a space where I'm like, well, what if somebody sees?
Right. Not necessarily what does it mean about me. Right.
What if somebody sees me acting like a man and then their idea of me changes?
And now they won't validate me as a woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, for my heart, I don't give a fuck. Yeah. It's like, I want to go hunting and fishing and like stomping around in my muddy boots. But, somebody's going to be like, oh, that's not very ladylike. To which my general response is, fuck you. I was looking for like gender nonconformity in people around me as like a way of saying it's okay to me. So like riding the bus. And it's really interesting like how much women get away with being gender nonconforming as compared to men. You occasionally see a rock and roll dude with long hair or whatever, and that's probably about it for the most part. But there's like loads of women with short hair wearing jeans, which is like, this gender non-conforming thing. And I started like counting all of that up, and I'm like, well, there's a lot of gender non-conforming people out there, and there's a lot of very tall women out there, and there's a lot of not a lot of women with shoulders as broad as mine, but and so you're like looking at people in that kind of way. And I think that we like start to get what you're suggesting is like transdar, where you're like, okay, there's this, that, and the other thing adds up, and maybe. And honestly, if this ends up in the video and there's cisgender people listening to it, don't do it. Don't be like, oh, are you trans? You're so brave. That.
Oh my, yes.
Oh.
Yeah, that whole braveness shtick is so uncomfortable, and
it's kind of nice, but like especially out of the blue from somebody you don't know.
No. And the thing is, they are for the most part very well-meaning.
100%.
But I didn't do it because I was brave. I did it because I was at death's door.
Yeah.
Do I die or do I take the leap?
Yeah.
And so I took the leap. Is that bravery? I don't know. It was necessity.
Exactly. When I realized that I was hurting myself so much that I was hurting the people around me as well, just by like just not being an okay, effective person that was as good as I wanted to be, and that was a big part of it for me. But I don't feel like I've been brave at all. I think I was a coward for a really long time, and then like sometimes I like punish myself mentally about that, like how did you not do this for yourself sooner? And have kind of reconciled to the I like me now, and that means that everything happened at the right moment, and that the person that I am and the things that I've got are, not necessarily the things that I need, but the things that I can work with to, make my life and the life of my community better. So, that's what I'm trying to do. So there's, the bad people, like the TERFs and gender crits and all of that kind of stuff online. I mostly avoid it, but every once in a while I like dip into what's going on Twitter just to check it out.
Like, don't do it.
Oh no, it's
no, Dakota, come back.
Yeah.
No.
One of their big things is that we're stealing the good lesbians, or something like that. It's wild. Like, oh, so now you're like taking lesbians and turning them into dudes, and I'm like, Exactly.
What? That doesn't even make sense.
Exactly.
It does if you're like oversimplifying the whole planet, but
yeah. And it's,
I don't know how you have patience for it.
oh, I don't at all. It's like I just go and read it and click block. I'm like, oh, yeah.
Oh my god.
It took me fucking forever to realize that living as a boy, or as like especially as a teenage boy, was actually traumatic for me. Because I'd say about a decade ago, I started wondering, like, why do I have this anxiety disorder?
Yeah.
Why am I having these problems? I've since found that out. Long, very, very long story. But I was like going back through my past, you know, looking for the uncle that molested me or whatever the heck would be there.
Yeah.
There was the trauma that created the roots of this anxiety disorder. No, it wasn't that. It was like literally just being forced to be a boy.
Yeah.
Trauma. And it's like, that's not my parents' fault, but they were there and doing the things that encouraged that, and all of the people and all of the teachers and all of the other kids. And, I can't blame any of them for what I was experiencing, but what I was experiencing was literally crushing myself, destroying my own soul.
Because there's no, No, you find yourself, you have there's no way, there's no solution. Is what you have this thing, and you end up, well, like me, it sounds like you. I kind of, for the longest time, I went numb. No, I dissociated. I was schizoid. I don't know how to describe it. I was
dissociated is probably a really good word. I'm sure I was for years at a time at varying points.
Yeah.
Probably disassociated is probably the really best word. You were, when I first knew of you, already in a pretty gender non-conforming space.
Yeah, but I still went by female pronouns because, like, I was still questioning, and I'm one of those people, like, I flip-flop so much that until I'm friggin' serious, I'm not going to say anything.
Yeah.
Like, the internal flip-flop happens, but I don't want to be that flip-floppy person in real life and have people just never believe me.
Well, that's the thing, is that, like, we have to not have to deal with their judgment, but, it's there.
Yeah.
And it becomes, like, part of the process, because these are people that you care about and in your friend group and stuff like that, and you can want to disregard them, but it's not always easy.
No, and especially, like, when it comes to family, like, I understand some people have to cut off toxic family members.
Yeah.
But my parents are just old and confused. They're not toxic.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I could do anything besides, like, be a serial killer or something, and they'd still love me. Like, they're the most supportive, wonderful people ever. But the whole pronouns thing, they just don't get. And I'm like, they get a pass because they're my parents, but not everybody can give their parents a pass or has the privilege to. I just have the privilege that my parents respect me enough that they understand what I'm doing to a degree.
Mm-hmm. And it's kind of interesting because, like, I never thought of how to put this. I never thought of my gender as important to people who weren't sexual partners, right? But my parents are like, have taken a long time to adjust out of thinking of me as a dude. My mom misgendered me yesterday, just casually in the background. I'm talking to my dad, Father's Day, on the phone, and she's like, "Oh, tell him the blah blah blah," and I'm like, "Okay, this shit happens."
Yeah, it does, and it's like you can get offended every time it happens, or if you love the person, you respect them enough, you can kind of just, more often than not, dust it off your shoulder and just be cool with it. But then if they do it too much, or you feel like they're doing it out of malice, it's like, okay, well, we need to have a talk.
Yeah, well, and it's like, so people that I think are doing it out of malice, I'm just like, gone, done. I have no time for that at all. But the rest of it, it's like a combination of, let's not make this a big deal, like people stumbling over themselves to apologize for 5 minutes, like I suddenly hate them or something like that.
with, seeing a person's gender and being able to flip that if you need to. Like, that's a skill that it's, some things are ingrained and it's just automatic, but you can change that if you want to.
Yeah.
But it's a bit of a skill, I think, that you have to work on. And I think it's easy compared to what trans people have to put up with in life. Like, people say it's hard to get things right, but I think it's difficult, and I'll give people a little bit of leeway there. But compared to things that trans people have to go to, I think those things are easy. So I don't know. I hope this doesn't come across as too shaming, but
it's not at all. It's like, I think for some people, they have to go on a voyage of just like literally going from never having thought about this at all before to understanding it. That's a voyage. And it's like, even for me, like at a certain point, even just a couple of years ago, my understanding of like non-binary people wasn't in a really great space, where I was like, I could understand androgynous non-binary people. I'm like, yes, they're not doing gender. But then, hanging out with a friend who wants to go by they, them pronouns, and their beard and their masculine dress, and I'm just like, so you're not doing the thing, but you want me to. And that was like a moment for me where I was like, oh, okay, now I understand. You're just not obligated to your pronouns, and you give yourself permission to fluctuate within this, and that's a phenomenal thing. Or not fluctuate, or whatever, it doesn't matter. And I was like holding on to this like obstinate thing that, for me, that's been a lesson of like, what are other people going through when trying to reconcile or understand who I am and what I've gone through and why, and because people have their curiosities. A little too often they're about our genitals, but that's strange.
It's just living the truth. That's the best thing in and of itself. What of that specifically? Well, one of the most deeply satisfying things is something I mentioned to you before, is that my relationship with my daughter is on a sure footing that it was never on before. It just couldn't be. So there's that. I told Scarlett last night, I said, I think my brain works better on estrogen. I really like that. No, it's true. This is the thing. This is something I've thought a lot about, particularly since I'm off the anti-androgens, which I started on. I was on at the beginning for about 6 months. I was on the spiral and the lactate. Good old spiral.
Fog is real.
Yeah.
Remember, that's what makes you so unique. And that's what makes you an individual. So instead of looking at it as a fear, think of it as a positive. Think of it as a loving thing. Because think of the courage that you have compared to some cisgendered folks. Think about the bravery that you had. Think about the amount of information you've shared with the world and how much, reciprocation you've received because of that, and the love that comes with that. So think of the good stuff, and just, we just have to deal with it every day. And then just deal with it as it comes.
The idea of passing, and like, so the complexity of that, of I want to pass so that somebody won't murder me, or I want to pass because my ego says that I can, and that's what beautiful is. And, trying to figure out the balance of fuckery within that.
Yeah.
And to actually let it go and just be like, no, I'm me, and this is cool. And everybody else just needs to be cool with it because I am, and that's like the good place that someday I will attain, perhaps.
I'm sure you'll attain it.
Uh-huh.
I'm sure that there have been days where you've been walking somewhere and someone called you Miss.
Sure.
And it just made your heart sing because they
the euphoria
felt and knew that you were a woman.
Yeah.
They you walked past them and they were like, I'm so sorry, Miss. And that feels so good. And I will tell you something. That's something you should never take for granted. I don't ever, I transitioned like 31 years ago. I don't take it for granted when someone automatically calls me miss, because I understand the privilege that comes with that. I've had friends that haven't, and I fucking hate using this word. Pass. I know you use it, and that's your prerogative. I'm saying for me in my own language, I hate that word.
Well, it's like it exists, but it's also like this thing that I'm like, there's so many problems because what we're doing is we're supplicating ourselves to cisgender people in a way.
Yeah.
And that's gross. It's like, so I'm going to pass so you don't kill me, or I'm going to pass so that I'm pleasing to your eye. And I'm like, I don't give a fuck about you, honestly. And why am I doing this? But
I don't remember asking to have sex with you. I don't really care what you think of me.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, I want to say this, the whole passing thing is a very sort of antiquated commentary, along with words that should never exist anymore. And when I talk to the Ryerson students, I say this all the time. We should stop using the words male to female. I was never a man. I was born with a penis.
Yes.
There is a difference. Trans men were never women. They were born with vaginas. There's like, I've been talking about this for 16 years. I still get goosebumps when I talk about that.
Yeah.
Because it's such an antiquated. Some women have penises. Some have vaginas.
Like when my friends are saying things like, when you were a man, and I'm like, sweetie, no, that never happened. I pretended for a very long time.
If I was a man, I'd be a gay man right now, right? Like, you know, you talk to them, you go, with the acceptance level of what's going on, you go, if I were a man, I would be a man right now. I wouldn't give a shit.
Yeah.
This isn't a costume I'm putting on. When you saw me dressed as a man, that was the costume.
It all comes down to education, exposure, education. And then certainly when certain trans women who have made it really big in Hollywood or, show business, they come out looking amazing with overnight. They come out.
Oh God! If I could spend $1 million, right?
Right. And that's exactly what we have to teach the public, that just because I don't have $1 million doesn't make me any less than this person.
Yeah.
We're all still the same. So that it comes from education. And, hopefully more and more of the world is getting educated. I mean, at least I know a lot of children that I'm around, they're all going to school for now. So let's just hope that education is what helps the next generation to accept each other and just be okay with each other, regardless of who that person is.
There's lessons just in existing in this way about just like living boldly, and being yourself and daring to put whatever, like, if I want to get tattoos on my neck, like Samantha, well, who fucking, I already did this, and what is the real difference? People are just going to have to accept me. And
do you know why those tattoos are there?
Yeah, tell me.
They're an optical illusion. Because before I had my Adam's apple surgery, when you looked at my Adam's apple, instead of looking at my Adam's apple, your eyes would automatically go to one of my tattoos.
Nice, well played.
Right? My ex-boyfriend, who was a tattoo artist, was like, "That's a genius," and I was like, "Thanks." But now I've had it done.
I'm just lucky. I don't really even have one that's pronounced.
No, not at all. And that's a sort of common misconception, right?
Sure.
The ideology behind an Adam's apple is that you have to have been born a man. No. The Adam's apple is part of a certain genetic characteristic, as in height, as in so many other things. Sandra Bullock has an Adam's apple. We all know she's not genetically born male. And so I always would have to say, like, some supermodels have Adam's apples, and they were not born genetically male. An Adam's apple is a genetic characteristic of height. It is a male thing. It doesn't mean that you're a man.
Well, it's like, so that's an excellent point, is that there's this variation. And it took me like a little while to adopt this. It's like, there's just some tall women out there. I know this like 6 foot tall redhead 6'5" tall redhead with dreads. And she's cisgender and killing it at life and just being awesome. And I'm looking up at her and I'm like, oh, this means that I can, the little bit of me is within the range. Yeah.
Yeah, that
Exactly.
that you can feel like, look, I'm 6'1", I have broader shoulders.
Sure.
But I rarely wear dresses, but when I do, I fucking wear the shit out of that dress. And I wear heels and I wear it all, and I'm like, there is a little voice inside of my head that says, you look like a man. But there's also another voice inside of my head that says, who fucking cares?
Sure.
Do you feel good? Go out.
Uh-huh.
Have fun, right?
Well,
like, some people are just going to know that you're trans. Some people aren't. Who gives a shit?